Good morning, welcome back to In the Garden. Paul and Taft here, and Paul, we're trying to figure out what we're talking about today.
I know, I've been struggling with what the subject matter should be today, and then it dawned on me that the best idea would be to stop and smell the roses.
Makes perfect sense. We're smelling the roses. Now, one thing, Paul, that we're talking about is something that we haven't seen over the last few weeks when we were talking about plants that need a lot of shade, especially during the afternoon. The rose, not that way. It needs full sunshine throughout the day.
Full blazing sun, at least 6 hours. You know, the roses, thanks to the perfect spring weather,
Oh, it's been great.
have just been magnificent this year. And so there's so many choices, you know. People think of roses as one thing. No, there's hybrid teas, there's floribundas, there's grandifloras, there's shrub roses, there's all kinds, the knockout roses, roses on standards, so many different roses to choose from. And people come in and they're always asking, you know, what's your favorite rose? Well, I don't have one, it's whatever you like, because look at all these colors.
Yeah, all the colors, different kinds of blooms. We're even seeing some over here I didn't even think was a rose because some of the blooms look totally different.
Right.
Just so many varieties to choose from.
And climbers as well, which it's a little misnomer. They don't climb, but because they don't have anything to adhere to a trellis or anything, they're elongated stems is what they are, so you have to give them some support. But biggest, most important thing is good air circulation. Roses are somewhat notorious for some fungal diseases. Black spot, rust, and mildew being the top three. So one of the surest ways to prevent that, or at least minimize it, is to make sure you've got good air circulation. So don't crowd the plants. If you're planting them up against a fence, make sure you come a good 5 feet or so away, because most of these will develop 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. If you give them that air circulation, then that'll help a lot in minimizing those fungal diseases. Also, soil prep. You know, a lot of times I don't recommend that you amend the soil when you're planting something because you want it to get used to whatever it's going to grow in. Roses are a bit of an exception. They do need a fairly enriched and well-drained soil.
Okay, and I know I have several roses in my backyard that are really doing well this year, and the problem is it seems almost like they need to be pruned a little bit because they are taking over a big space. How do we approach the rose bush with all of the thorns on them and be able to prune it correctly?
Carefully.
The words, that's the way I look at it every time, is carefully.
Well, actually there are rose gloves you can buy that have a protective sleeve all the way up to here.
You gotta show me where those are next, because I may need them.
They're nice to have. Most pruning takes place late February or so around here.
Okay.
That's when most of the really radical pruning takes place. But throughout the summer, throughout the growing season, you can snip them and cut them back a little bit if you like, and certainly you can harvest these beautiful flowers and set them on the dinner table.
All right, what about like in pots and things like that when we talk about some of the backyard patios and those type of things? Folks maybe want a little bit of color out there and they love the rose. Is that doable as well?
Absolutely, they do great in pots, and some of the drift roses are particularly well suited. Another issue though that a lot of people, everybody wants to stop and smell the roses, literally. And so there are some of the older varieties do have a beautiful scent that we're enjoying right now. Some of the newer ones, less so. In fact, oftentimes they have no scent whatsoever. But what they make up for is a lot more blooms. And that's particularly true of the knockouts, which have been hugely successful in the past decade. There is another issue called rose rosette, which is a disease that's caused by a mite, a very tiny mite. So if the telltale signs are just really mutant growth on your rose, you can do some pruning to try and keep it from spreading. But if it wipes out your roses, then it's best not to plant in that same bed for a couple of years. And don't use a blower around your rose bed, because those mites actually aren't very mobile at all. But when you use that blower, it'll send those mites all over the place and they'll infect other roses. It's not that big a concern, really. It hasn't deterred anyone from coming in and buying roses, I'll tell you that.
Any other pests that we need to worry about? I know we talked about the mite, we talked about some of the fungal diseases it can have, but other than that, is there really any pests that we need to worry about?
Japanese beetles can be a problem. So yeah, I mean, you know, they're not without problems. I don't want to suggest that they're as carefree as a lot of the other plants that I've discussed. So you do have to be on the lookout for the Japanese beetle there. We do have some controls for those. But honestly, even with all that, it still makes sense to go ahead and plant a rose because of the absolute beauty.
Yeah, lots of beauty indeed. And again, we're talking about planting something where we have a lot of sunshine, and the rose is the perfect thing to fit your needs.
Absolutely.
All right, let's continue to smell the roses, shall we?
Shall we?
All right.
Ooh, nice.
Not bad.